As we begin day 2, we're going to identify and interpret slope, the x-intercept, the y-intercept from the given equation or a graph of a line. We're going to find the equation of parallel and perpendicular lines. We're going to interpret models and their graphs, and then we're going to also perform geometric transformations of a line. So starting with example number 7, it says the equation 6 minus 2y equals x is graphed in the xy plane. Which of the following is true about the graph? So to start with, we can change this into the form of y equals mx plus b, because this form gives us a slope, and it also tells us what the y-intercept is. So it doesn't help us with the x-intercept, but it definitely tells us what the y-intercept is. So what I'm going to do is solve for y equals mx plus b by subtracting 6 from each side. So we have negative 2y equals x minus 6. Divide each side by negative 2, so we're left with y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. Well, because this y-intercept is really at positive 3, we're able to go ahead and cancel out a and b. Then we have our slope of negative 1/2, so therefore my answer is D. Something that's really important, as we wrote above, the x-intercept is written as x comma 0, because the x-intercept falls along the x-axis. We have x comma 0. And then my y-intercept is at 0 comma y, because my line is somewhere, my point is somewhere along the y-intercept at 0y. So just something to keep in mind if you were to actually plot the point of the x-intercept and the y-intercept. And knowing this actually helps us with number 8. It says, which of the following is the equation of the line in the xy plane with an x-intercept at negative 2/7 and y-intercept at 8/7? So I'm going to change my x-intercept, so it's at negative 2/7 comma 0. So I'm actually writing down an ordered pair, a coordinate. And my y-intercept is at 0 comma 8/7. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the x and the y, or the x and the y, and separately plug them in to the x and the y in each of the equations that are given as your multiple choice answers. So we have 7 times 0 minus 28 times negative 2/7 equals 8. 7 times 0 is 0. Negative 28 reduced by 7, you get negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 2 is 8. So we have 8 equals 8, which is true. So then I can separately plug in 0 comma 8/7 just to make sure that we have the right answer. So we have 7 parentheses 8 over 7 minus 28 times 0 equals 8. Negative 28 times 0 is 0. 7 divided by 7, that reduces to 1, and we're left with 8 equals 8, which is true. So therefore, I know that my answer is A. Please make sure that you are plugging these separate coordinates in because a common mistake is to write it as negative 2/7 comma 8 over 7 and then plug them in at the same time. None of these will get you the right answer if you do that. So the x-intercept is one ordered pair, the y-intercept is a second ordered pair. Go ahead and try out B, C, and D just to make sure. You'll see that A is the correct answer. So as you notice, when we input my x-intercept coordinate, so we have negative 2/7 comma 0. When we input that into x and y into letter B, we get negative 8 equals 8, which is not true. For letter C, when we input 0 in for y and negative 2/7 in for x, we get negative 8 equals 8. For letter D, when we input 0 in for y and negative 2/7 in for x, we get that 8 equals 8, which is correct. However, for letter choice D, when I plug in the other one to double check my work, so when I input the 8/7 in for y and 0 in for x, we get negative 8 equals 8, which is not true. So that is why the answer is not D. For numbers 9 and 10, It's really important that we highlight these key words, parallel and perpendicular. Parallel lines have the same slope, and then perpendicular lines have opposite and reciprocal slopes. So opposite reciprocal means opposite symbol, so positive becomes negative, negative becomes positive, and reciprocal means that you're flipping the fraction. So to start with each of these, I'm going to take a look at what the slope is. So for y equals negative 3x minus 1, I know that my slope is at negative 3. So for number 9, if we have a parallel line, if I want to know a parallel line to that line, my slope is going to be at negative 3. So we're able to cross off A and B. So we're just left with C and D. Then, because we know that it passes through the point 1, 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my x and my y and input it into x and y in the actual equation. So we have 1 equals negative 3 times 1 plus 4, and then we also have 1 equals negative 3 times 1 plus 1. For letter C, you'll get that 1 equals negative 3 plus 4 is 1, which is true, whereas letter D, we get 1 equals negative 3 plus 1, which is negative 2, which is not true. Therefore, my answer is C. For number 10, we're looking for an equation of a line that passes through, here's my new point, negative 5, 3, and perpendicular to the line with this slope, or this equation. So this equation is this slope, negative 1/8, so my original slope is negative 1/8. And because we're looking for a perpendicular, it's perpendicular to that line, so my perpendicular slope is going to change to positive. When I flip 8 over 1, 8 divided by 1 is 8. So therefore, I'm able to cross off C and cross off A. So we're looking for the perpendicular line, so perpendicular slopes too. So then I'm going to take my point and we're going to plug it in for y and for x. So we have 3 equals 8 times negative 5 plus 43, and then we have 3 equals 8 times negative 5 minus 43. So for letter B, we have 3 equals 8 times negative 5 is negative 40 plus 43 is 3. Whereas letter D, we have 3 equals 8 times negative 5, negative 40 minus 43 gets me negative 83, which is not true. So therefore, my answer choice is B. For number 11, it says during a major snowstorm, the snow fell at a rate of approximately 1.8 inches for 5 hours. So if we think about snow falling, let's talk about the 0 hour, and then the 1 hour, and then 2 hours, and then 3 hours, and so forth. So we know that it's snowing at a rate, so it's really important, that word rate, of approximately 1.8 inches per 5 hours. Well, if we're thinking about the 0 hour, so 0 hours would mean before any snow has fallen, we have to think in our head, okay, how much snow is on the ground? There wouldn't be any snow on the ground, okay? And then after 1 hour, now how much snow is on the ground? 1.8 inches. Go ahead and pause the video and fill out letters A, B, and C. So after 1 hour, we have 1.8 inches, 2 hours, 3.6 inches, and after 3 hours, we have 5.4 inches. So we have snow falling at a rate of 1.8 inches per hour for 5 hours. I want you to think about what the word rate means in terms of the equation of a line. All right, and then as you're thinking about the rate of this particular problem, go ahead and cross off 2 of the answers in number 11. Pause the video and cross them off. You should be crossing off letters C and D. Rate is talking about slope, and if the snow is falling at a rate of 1.8 inches per hour for 5 hours, my slope is going to be increasing. So we're left between A and B. Now, one of the first questions I asked you was how much snow is on the ground at 0 hours? At 0 hours, and we said that it's 0 inches. So therefore, my answer choice is A. At 0 hours, that'd be time, And in letter B, it's saying that when the time is 0, we already are starting at 2 inches of snow or 1.8 inches of snow, depending on how you look at the graph. That is not true. When snow falls, we start at 0. 0 hours, 0 amount of snow. On number 12, we have Anatoly is keeping track of the salt supply of his restaurant. As of May 1st, the restaurant has a supply of 7.5 kilograms of salt. He estimates that the salt supply will decrease linearly and become empty in about 20 weeks. So it says that W represents the number of weeks after, keyword being after, May 1st, and S represents the restaurant salt supply in kilograms. So we're going to find two ordered pairs, W, S, which would be on the graph of salt. So I see this first word, this first number, 7.5 grams of salt. So I know that we have some sort of weeks, 7.5. And then I see that it becomes empty after 20 weeks. So I know that my other week, the W, is going to be 20, something. Well, on May 1st, we have 7.5 kilograms of salt, and W represents the weeks after May 1st. So on May 1st, we haven't even started yet. That would be week 0. It's just like when you're thinking about age. You don't begin at 1 year old, you begin at 0 years old, and then build up from there. Then it says that it becomes empty in 20 weeks. So how much salt do we have after 20 weeks? 0. So using this information, knowing that my salt supply will decrease linearly as we underline above, we can go ahead and cross off letters B and letter D. Because since it's decreasing linearly, we need a smaller slope, a decreasing slope, negative. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and plot the 2 points that we found. So we have 0, 7.5 and 20, 0. And when I plot those, we're able to figure out my answer is A. For number 13, we have the width of a rectangle is means equals. So we have 4 more than, so 4 plus half the length. If L represents length and W represents width, which of the following graphs represents the relationship between L and W? Well, I see in here that my slope in the form of y equals mx plus b, noticing where y is for W and x is for L, I see that we have an increasing slope. So we can go ahead and cross off letters A and C. So now we're just between B and D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a point. So I'm going to use 0, 4. I'm going to input 0 for L and 4 for W into the equation that we created. And we'll get 4 equals 4, which is perfect. Therefore, my letter choice is B. And then finally, in number 14, it says that the graph below in the xy plane can be written in the equation y equals m parentheses x minus 2 plus 4. So back at the beginning of our notes from day 1, we wrote down these transformations. So when we have a number that's inside of the parentheses says A, or like, for instance, in the number 14 where we have negative 2x minus 2, are we moving up, down, left, or right? Go ahead and write down what you think the answer is. Up, down, left, or right. And then with that plus 4 on the outside, think about, based on these transformations, are we moving up, down, left, or right? Go ahead and write them down before I give the answer. So based on the transformations, we're moving right 2 and then up 4. So if my graph right here was moved right 2 and up 4, what would be the original graph? Go ahead and pause the video and pick the original graph. So if I use my multiple choice answers, you'll find that the only one that moves right 2 and up 4 correctly is letter choice B. If anything, letter D was extremely close, but not quite. We're going to go ahead and skip number 15, and you guys can start working on your exit slip. The last video clip will be the answers to the exit slip. The answer to number 1 is D. The answer to number 2 is B. And the answer to number 3 is C.